This is Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast, episode 088.
Good question.
I'm Lucas Pinckard, and I'm here with
Isaac Tauaefa. Good morning.
What's up? Good morning.
How's it going, man?
It's going good. I need you to come this way.
Okay.
That's why I had that shifted. There you go. Look at that. Yeah, we're gonna
Is that
bring
good?
you. Yeah, we're gonna bring you into frame.
Does that look good?
Nope.
Looks great.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. You look,
What's up,
you look
everybody?
Wonderful.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, team.
How's it?
It's fall in Texas. We're both wearing our hoodie.
It's comfortable.
It is nice. I
Yeah,
like it so
we're,
much. It's like 40 degrees outside right now. It's beautiful.
Made it even harder. We were talking about right before the torture we're enduring currently with specifically with our 2-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
They don't feel like it's necessary to sleep.
yeah.
Yeah.
That love to wake up right when we're going to bed.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's it.
there's that. It's a psych. It's yeah. Thought you were going to bed? Psych.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
It's not happening. What happened? I need a TT in a potty.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
You don't.
You don't at all.
Dad-
That's the last thing you want to do.
I want cheese. It's 9:50 p.m. Why do you want cheese now?
Chocolate chips?
Yeah.
No.
Chuck it milk?
No, you can't have any of those
No.
things.
No, you can have a pillow in your blanket and go to bed.
Mhm.
That's what you can have.
Or
But they
some-
don't understand.
You, how about instead of chocolate chips, how about Benadryl? What do you think about that?
exactly.
That's was a suggestion that I gave to my wife. It's like we could just give him a Benadryl, and then I was told I could go to bed.
Yeah.
if that's how I was going to try to parent. So
Sometimes it's necessary though, and thank God for medicine when you need it, man. Those are always good nights.
do your kids do the thing where like because medicine's like bubble gum flavored now for kids, right? That like they don't mind taking medicine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
A 2-year-old's really good at taking medicine.
okay, yeah, Levi's
Yeah.
stellar at it, and we've been, we got crazy seasonal allergy stuff here in Texas, and so like we'll give him, I don't know, like 2 milliliters of Zyrtec, whatever
Yeah.
the thing is. But now, if we don't give him the Zyrtec, he gets upset.
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah.
I need Zyrtec. Like,
Yeah.
You don't. No, you don't. You're fine.
Exactly.
Need it.
Yeah, it's funny because
You need to shut up.
start wondering.
That's what
I
you
need medicine.
Yeah.
That's what Safina says. I need medicine, and so we'll just sometimes I'll take the little syringe that comes with the Tylenol or whatever, and I'll just put like some apple juice in the little cup.
Oh, you know what? That's
Give it-
not a bad
she
idea.
feels like she got some.
Yeah, put a little bit of hydrate in there and squirt it in his mouth.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
Or like if the other kids need medicine, and she's like, I need medicine too.
Yeah,
Like
just give
they
her
actually need it and she doesn't need it, then I'll give her some
a
juice
little
or
magnesium and chloride. And
something. Yeah.
there you go. There you go, kid.
Yep.
Get some rest. Yeah, but now RFK is going to change all that.
Oh man. Hey, that
Buddy, you want to talk about somebody that is like on a war path against
I love it, man.
stuff? It's crazy. But that's a topic for a different type of podcast,
True.
I think. So we're not
True.
going to wade
True.
too far into those waters.
No, I will just say I appreciate that. I've been kind of on that path, just looking at stuff and being like, really? This is in this? They allow that? It's crazy. So I'm thankful that somebody higher up, someone in government will look at that stuff, because there's so much money to be made there that it's kind of hard to make changes like that. So it's cool that's gonna happen. Well, let's get. I'm gonna get our sponsorships out there,
Let's do it.
and then
And then I want to talk about, were you at the belt promotions on Saturday?
yeah,
I want to talk a little bit about
yeah,
that.
it was good.
Because I was not there.
Okay,
Okay.
So first sponsor,
First sponsor.
Resurrection Construction.
Come on, baby.
Yeah.
Alan.
So thank you to Alan Smith, our good friend.
Freaking hairless ape.
Yes, the hairless ape. Just terrorizing the Denton County gyms.
Yep.
Yeah.
It just all at Fitness Connection over there being, you know what he reminds me of? Not a hairless ape. Have you seen the newest iteration of the movie Rampage with with Dwayne.
Yes.
Yeah, he's
The
the
white
he's the
ape.
white gorilla. Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
100% a white gorilla.
Mm-hmm. His daughter, who also works out with him, thought that was a pretty accurate and entertaining description of her dad.
We were just talking about them the other day. I was having coffee with Will Tate, and we were talking about Chelsea and just their whole family. And then Chelsea walked up while we were there, and so we gave her a hug. So we were just talking about you, but it's great to see them. But really thankful for Alan and for Resurrection Construction and their sponsorship of our podcast. Many episodes over the past 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And extremely grateful for them. And it's not that they have it's not like Alan or Resurrection Construction are big jiu-jitsu people or something. They were just I've known them for a long time, and they were like, oh yeah, you're serving the Lord. You're honoring him, and you want to make his name great, man. We want to be a part of that. Here you go. Here's a lot of sponsorship, podcast sponsorship. So really incredible to have their help. And go check them out. I mean, they have a really specific audience, so it's not like everybody's, every consumer.
It's very
here.
niche.
Yeah. Multifamily door and trim.
Multifamily door trim. Which, okay, so I heard about that, and I was like, so you're just well, I guess apartment complexes have a bunch of doors because there's the door on the outside. But I was not thinking about, because I mentioned it to a buddy of mine. He's like, who's the guy you keep talking about? It's like, well, they do multifamily door trim, and he's like, oh, dude, that's crazy. I was like, why? He goes, well, each one of those apartments and stuff are gonna have between 4 and 15 doors. I was like, what are you talking about? Because I'm only thinking about the outside door. I'm not thinking about bedrooms, bathrooms, pantries, closets. Yeah, all of those things have doors.
Yeah, it says they do door and trim insulation services as well, which when I worked with Alan at a different company, they were also doing hardware supply, which I mentioned they do some of that as well, which is hey, we had this huge apartment complex or dorm complex that's going up. We need door and trim stuff. So it's the doors also, it was the wire shelvings inside the closets and the fire extinguishers and the push plates and kick plates and doorknobs and all that.
That's wild.
Yeah, so it's insane, and there's so much stuff. I mean, in every single apartment. So it's a lot, man, but he's done really well. The company's done really well. And the thing I love most is that they're using that financial success to give back, to build up the kingdom of God. So they want to honor the Lord with their finances, which is amazing. So thank you.
Also, I called his workout partner Chris on the last episode because his name was fleeting. And so I just filled it in with what's generic guy name. Oh, Chris. Turns out his name's Matt. Former NFL player. Had no idea.
I think Alan told me that.
Not only have I not been calling him by the proper name, I had no idea what his background and stuff was. And we've been working out for 4 or 5 months together. And Alan was like, yeah, you didn't know any of this? No clue. No clue. So, shout out to Matt, and I apologize.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I don't think he's a podcast listener, but he's a big dude. Mr. February a few years ago.
Sweet.
So, for whatever that's worth.
It's worth a lot.
Is it? You got the calendar?
I don't know what calendar that is, but well, thank you. Thanks again to Alan and Resurrection Construction.
Yeah.
And as always, thank you to Jocko Fuel for their continued support.
Yeah.
And
get that iced tea lemonade, formerly the tactical tea, is what I'm rocking today. What you got over there?
I got the lemon lime.
Oh.
Yeah, which used to be Citrus Psycho.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you to Jocko Fuel for helping my brain work
Tasty.
Early in the morning.
Yep, with all the nootropics they got in there. Use code J&JJ10, save you 10% on it. And if you are at our event this weekend in Dripping Springs, Texas on November the 16th, we'll be at Stoic Jiu-Jitsu, which is owned by Leif Babin and Marcus Dewitt, I think is how you say his name. Douthit. Okay, yeah. So I've been saying it incorrectly for years. So Marcus's wife Lacey just got her black belt. Yeah. And so those two families own Stoic Jiu-Jitsu. Tim Kennedy is going to be our guest instructor for the weekend, and we are debuting some Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu shakers, which the very first place you'll be able to get them is at at this event, and maybe the only place you'll be able to get them is at this event, depending on how they sell. But it's pretty cool. I'm stoked about that.
I'm excited too, man.
Yeah, we're using a company called Sports Shaker that is from Texas, but they're one of the few companies in the United States where all of the plastics and stuff are manufactured in the U.S., and all of their stuff is FDA approved.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, which is crazy. So a lot of stuff, and I was getting a little education on this when we were talking about the products, a lot of this stuff that we get that's like BPA free, there's like 90, I think he said like 96 different types of BPA. In order for something to be considered BPA free by the Environmental Protection Agency, so to be BPA free by the EPA, you have to exclude 4 of those things.
Oh.
So there can still be like 92 different types of BPA that are part of that plastic product, but the 4 that affect the environment are not in them. But the 92 that can affect your body are, but on something that's FDA approved, you can't have any of that stuff in it. And so all their stuff is FDA approved. Yeah, like you could have your infant could drink out of it and have no harm.
That's awesome.
So yeah, pretty cool getting to partner with Sports Shaker on that. The shakers look really, really good. They get delivered to Lacey last week. She was like, "Hey, they're awesome. We got them at the gym." And so
I'd love to hear that.
Yep. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I think it's gonna
You'll
be
have
cool.
a little Jocko fuel too. For you guys there at the event. So, man, it'll be an amazing event. I can't wait for that.
It's gonna be a good day.
It is.
Yep.
I mean,
I'm stoked about it.
Tim is incredible, and if you want to book him, like to speak or teach or do something, his fee is astronomical.
Yeah,
but
appropriate.
Yeah,
yeah,
of course.
But
he wants to. But he wanted to give his time, and so it's a blessing. I mean, he believes in what we're doing enough to set aside that portion of his time to come do that. And
I think JP and I have him convinced to use you as the test dummy.
That's fine.
After everything he did to JP at Origin Camp.
Let's continue that. There'll be people there that are like, I already saw the clip. Like, okay, you're going to be his...
Why aren't you putting your fingers in his nose?
Can you do the technique where you rip their face off again? Yep. Yeah, that'll be great.
Rip their face off, steal their soul. That's what you do. Yeah.
So we're referring to an Origin video that JP filmed with Tim Kennedy there. JP was his...
Tim's top 5 submissions.
Yeah. His Uke, I think is what it's called. It's just like your demonstration partner. But yeah.
It was pretty good. And then the poor camera guy at the end got single-legged just from trying to help
getting kind of close.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he got close and he single-legged him. That's what you get. And they kept it in, which was hilarious.
That was too good.
Yeah, I love it, man. That's the event will be amazing. There's a ton of people that are traveling in. I heard that there are...
We get people from Florida coming in.
Yeah.
Some people from Utah.
Yep. Formiga told me that there are people flying up from Mexico for it. So he has gym affiliations there in Mexico that message him, we're coming to that event. So he would be there, but he's going to be coaching Victoria.
Jiu-Jitsu World League.
No.
Oh, no, he's coaching Victoria.
Yeah, let's see.
Does she have a pro fight?
She has a...
Because she's
incredible.
She's a terror.
Yeah, she's one of the best in the world. She's going to be fighting at the IBJJF Crown.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be streamed on Flow Grappling.
Nice.
This is, let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to... Yeah, I think that's it. Sorry, I want to make sure this is the right...
Live producing right here.
Live producing.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah, November 17th in Long Beach, California. IBJJF Crown. Some of the best jiu-jitsu jiu-jitsu fighters, jiu-jitsu
Is jiu-jitsu a thing?
I think so.
That's funny.
Yeah, but jiu-jitsu fighters, jiu-jitsu players,
practitioners,
some of the best ones, ever competing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so you can actually watch it on Flow Grappling. That's going to be November 17th.
Nice.
But that weekend, that's where Formiga will be coaching her, and then some people are not able to make it because of a Dallas Jiu-Jitsu World League. But we had checked when we were scheduling that. I think we just looked at Austin tournaments.
Yeah, but I think we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be good. There's a lot of people that are coming down from Dallas, but then a bunch of people are coming because it'll be the closest one. There's a lot of people in San Antonio that hit us up all the time. Like,
That's cool.
can you do an event down here? And it's like, well, this is the closest one,
No.
so people are coming.
No, we can't. San
We
Antonio.
would love to. Eventually.
If you want us to do an event in San Antonio, you need to bribe us with churros. Just
that
go.
will and I will say that will absolutely work on us. So
Yep.
there we go.
100% of the time.
Yeah.
Talk to me about belt promotions, and I got a question about this as we get into it. So,
So it was great. A lot of people that we know that are kind of part of the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu community, people that help out at events, there's some that have been there from the beginning. A lot of them ended up getting promoted. So our buddy Aaron Archer got promoted to brown belt. Brent Casiglio got his third degree as a black belt.
nice.
Robin Schmeichel got her blue belt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So now her and Dave have their blue belts.
That's cool.
But I told him it's just how it works is like, I know you guys are now both blue belts, but now she's technically a higher rank than you are. Kim calls it the wife belt.
Oh, yeah.
So she's got the wife belt.
Yep.
So now on equal footing in jiu-jitsu, but not really.
Not really.
Let's see.
Does Kim have any interest in jiu-jitsu at all?
I think she does. It would be impossible for us to train at the same time right now.
Yeah.
We have to have a lot of help with the kids. When they get a little bit older, then we could bring them to jiu-jitsu and both train at the same time.
And she's working nights, and that's where most of the beginner classes are.
Yep.
Because like Kirsten's got some interest in it. I know Amanda Donnell has done it in the past, and like she really enjoyed it. And we've been talking about it because Kay's like trying to figure out like what she wants to do, and wanting to get a little bit more active now that Scotty's he's 7 months old here in a few days. So she's like, yeah, I really like I want to do something because you're into it. I'm willing to try it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a great attitude to have.
But yeah, it is, and I'm very thankful for it. But I also am anticipating that it's going to be the one, like, oh, we tried it one time. She's like, nah. Because like she didn't grow up, playing any kind of contact sport. She didn't grow up doing martial arts or anything like that. But she was a gymnast until like her teens. So I think she would be really good at it because she's maintained a lot of that flexibility and strength, right? We've been doing a challenge with some of the guys in our church, and she's been doing push-ups and sit-ups and air squats and stuff with me. And so has Levi, and his form is terrible. But it's really difficult to critique a 2-year-old who's just like down there. All of his push-ups he does with one leg in the air. I don't get it. The few that like he actually is able to do a push-up, I'm like, come on. But the right leg is always off the ground.
He's
onto
something. He's got some glute activation there.
Yeah, like I think he's trying to like one up me.
Stabilization.
Like he's just kind of looking at me and he's like, oh yeah, well you did 20, but I did 2 like this, so it's kind of harder.
It is.
So it's just been a cool thing to see him for the family to rally around. So yeah, I'm hoping maybe she'll get into it. But I need to get my blue belt shoe by the time that happens, and I have not trained in like 6 months. Yeah. So between biceps tendonitis and baby,
that's right. Yep.
Yeah, it's been rough.
And
to
some
get
other
in the gym.
Injury as well. I think we talked about a while back. Yeah, but I mean, as Kramer
I'm
says,
old, man.
The mats will always be there. So
yeah,
when you're better, just
Yeah, I just turned 39.
Yeah,
and like on the day I turned 39, I was like, nah, this is fine. 39 in a day, I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure something needs to be reattached. Feels like something fell off in the middle of my sleep.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that.
So there's a thing with a lot of jiu-jitsu schools right now that they are changing the way that they do belt promotions. And I kind of want to get your opinion on it or your thoughts on it. That there are schools that, you had the old school like running the gauntlet, and then there are some that did kind of a Shark Tank kind of thing whenever you got your belt and all that. But there's this new wave of maybe they're 3rd or 4th generation schools, right? That, they're pretty far removed from whoever the original black belt was that was part of their belt lineage. and they're not doing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's here's your belt and a handshake and none of it. So are those things watering down the jiu-jitsu traditions because we're trying to get away from them?
I don't think so. I think that Formiga's really smart. So, I wasn't.
I think he would appreciate you saying
Yeah,
that.
well, he is. I'm not blowing smoke. I think he understands that there's just a different culture in America that people.
The meow meow culture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's just a different, like, people are like, I'm paying you. Like, why am I going to come here and you beat me up? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just
That's
checking
also
this
like
out.
part of the sport, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I understand what you're saying,
but there is in some jiu-jitsu schools, it's very, like, extremely territorial, extremely, like, the professor is like God in that place, and that's how a lot of schools are. Even back in Brazil, that's kind of, from what I've heard. I'm not, if there's
in
people
Brazil,
listening.
it sounds like that is exactly how the schools are.
Yeah. But of course, I mean, there are incredible instructors in every single school in every country, and so it's not. I'm not saying all schools are like that, but apparently that kind of old school, like, really hard. They were just very hard on students, but that created a certain loyalty and mental toughness and stuff that was necessary, especially for a lot of those people that are coming up, or that were coming up in the environment they were growing up in.
Yeah.
And so I don't have, whatever works there, that's fine. But Formiga's saying, like, it's not as necessary here. And he's saying, like, from what I've heard him talk about, he's like, the Brazilian professors that catch on to that will have more success in America because they're catering more toward, it's like, hey, listen, these people this is an exchange of services. Like, they're a paying customer. They come in, they're not coming in for me to yell at them and put them through boot camp and all this, unless that's what they sign up for specifically.
There's some people that sign up for that.
Yeah. But this is not, it's just like, hey, a lot of people are just, this is a stress reliever. This is like a way that they just stay in shape. This is a way that they get, help build their confidence in their children or in themselves. So he's smart in recognizing that it's like, hey, a lot of people are not looking for that kind of thing. You can still give the same level of attention to detail and great training, and and my professors, so David and Richie, are the same way. They're not like, I mean, they will whoop you on the mat if you want to smoke, but the way that they treat you is just like family, just friends, family. Like, they take care of you, they make sure you're, and so anyway, that kind of, but that lends itself to the way that they do belt promotions now. It's not, some schools still will do a Shark Tank. They'll throw you in there and you'll get whatever 2 minutes with every person in the school or something like that. And I mean, and that's fine. Like, I think that's fine. But how a lot of belt ceremonies are, like at Rodriguez and also at Double Five, it's very ceremonial. It's not like you're not going in there to get blitzed. You're just gonna, they say a little bit about you or your progress and why they felt that you're deserving of that promotion, and then they shake your hand, take a picture with you. Everyone cheers you on, and then so at Formigas, I wasn't there for most of the the ceremony part of the belt promotion, but I showed up later to the open mat right after to just say congratulations to all my friends that were there and get to spend some time with everybody. So that was a really cool time. Yeah, I loved it, man. It was it's great. It's always a really happy time. When you get to, that's a great environment to be a part of. Everyone is just so excited, and happy for each other. It's a cool environment. And people that don't train jiu-jitsu can't really, it's hard to explain to somebody because it's just so much. It's kind of like, I guess, being at like a college graduation, that kind of feeling where it's like, hey, these people have been striving and working towards something for years, and then now they're here. Because jiu-jitsu, it takes so long to get your next belt or next promotion. Once you get your black belt, then your degrees, they're like a set time. You can be promoted. You're only eligible for promotion after a certain amount of time at black belt for that long. So it's amazing to see. It's that same kind of environment where people have been working towards something for years, and then they get, then they earn something, and it's that kind of joy and like relief, and obviously a lot of these people are just, hey man, I'm showing up regardless. I'm not trying to get the next belt. I just want to train. And now my professor thought that I was, worth being promoted to the next thing. So it's a cool environment,
especially at the black belt level, like the amount of time, because I think the kind of the mythical belt, the coral belt, right? That most people that are in jiu-jitsu are never going to be eligible for that, because you have to have your black belt, I think, depending on, whose kind of timeline you're looking at, between like 30 and 50 years, you've got to have the black belt.
I think that's right. Yeah.
In order to do that. And so, guys like Dedeco or Formiga may be like one of the last kind of generations that's eligible for it, because they've, for Formiga, especially because he started as a kid, right? But he got his black belt in the early 2000s, I think. It's still going to be like maybe 20 years before he's eligible for that and deserved of it. But when the time comes, if he sticks with it, if he decides to continue doing jiu-jitsu, I don't know what.
Oh, he's told me, he's like, dude, jiu-jitsu saved my life, man. Life. I can't. Yeah. I'll never stop training.
Yeah, for sure.
It is cool. I've got to roll with. I got to roll with Carlos Machado. He was my professor for the first year I trained jiu-jitsu, and he's a coral belt. And it's amazing that it's just an honor to get to roll with a coral belt, any coral belt, because there's so few of them and they've been training for so long. It's like, that at this era, like however long Brazilian jiu-jitsu's been a sport, that those people, if they have a coral belt, that means that they were there at the very beginning of the sport.
Yeah.
And they have so much knowledge to pass on and so much technique. And so rolling with Carlos was insane. And again, like as a white belt, I didn't understand the honor that it was to get to roll with not only just a coral belt in general, but Carlos Machado.
Like, why is his belt so funny?
I'm like, this guy is so much older than me, and dude. And he would just, but you could see that knowledge, and Kung Fu Panda.
Yes.
Yeah, Professor. Is it Uguay?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's just made light work of his apprentice.
Yep.
Like, no problem.
Yeah, the turtle.
Yeah, so that was me. I was Kung Fu Panda, and Machado was the turtle.
Nice.
And he's not moving fast, but he's destroying me.
Yeah.
And that's what was going on. And so I was just like blown away by his expertise and knowledge. But anyway, one day, very many years from now, maybe I'll have a coral belt.
Yep.
Or maybe
I don't think it's happening for me.
I'll die mid-round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would.
That's how I want to die.
One, I would have to start training more, or at all, again to get back into it. But I would be on that belt trajectory, right? If it's like 10 to 15 years to get your black belt, right? I'm 55 at that point.
Yeah.
And then if it's like 30 to 40 years, like I'm 95 coming to the mats, they're like, oh, hey, here's your coral belt. And I'm going to have to, push my hover round up over the thing. Yeah. So I don't know that that's in the cards for most people, right? Because that's a wild thing, which is why it's such a cool thing, like you're talking about, to get to roll with somebody that's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if they're at a stage where they can still roll with you and they have a coral belt, that means that they started jiu-jitsu when they were literally like in diapers.
Yeah, like kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, Formiga was I think he said he was like 10 or 11 whenever he started. And if he's a phenomenal athlete, takes really great care of himself. I'm looking forward to the day where, like, if they still do the coral belt, which is something that they're talking about like doing away with, because this first kind of generation of guys is getting up in years, that if that's something that's still there, I'm really looking forward to getting the boys on the mat with them and be like, hey, listen, you just need to roll with coach.
Yeah.
While you got him. So yeah, man. Well, you want to dive into the word a little bit?
Yes, please.
So I spoke at a men's conference this past weekend, which was an absolute blast. I love getting to do that. Our sister church, Antioch Christian Fellowship. Yeah, does it. And
is it in Corinth over there?
Yeah.
Off Lake Sharon. Yeah.
Yep. So the pastor there, Dr. Chris Respis, and I have been great friends for a few years, and our friendship started just as we were both seeing each other at events, right? Oh, like the mayor's prayer breakfast, and they just go through the list of churches, and they shoot us all an email, and they're like, hey, if anybody can do it. And Chris and I always had time in our schedule to be there to get free breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, we saw each other at a lot of these kinds of things, and started, developing a relationship, hanging out, and we do a little show that's like focused on the Lake Cities. Together we do a little podcast called the Lake Cities Podcast. It's just about stuff that's happening in our community and that kind of thing. Anyway, we also realized like we're facing a lot of the same things, and there have been, I don't know, probably a dozen guys in the past couple of months that have talked to me about the lack of male leadership within their churches, and they're all over the country. And Chris had asked me to speak at this conference, and I was trying to figure out, what am I supposed to speak on or about? And the conference was called Rise, so it was obviously it was an acronym. Everything in church is an acronym,
of course.
But it was like reciprocate, ignite, spiritual, and excellence. And so my part was the S. I was spiritual, so I'm third on the docket, and I'm trying to figure out like what I wanted to talk about or to preach about, and what it really means to be a spiritual man of God. And so there were a couple of things that I honed in on. The first was, and this was really inspired by a buddy of mine named David Jesse, who has been a worship leader. He was one of the guys whenever Promise Keeper was like at its height. David was the guy that like him and his family lived in an RV. He would go to a potential site like 2 years before they actually had the Promise Keepers event and start doing the planning, start getting the churches and stuff together and making things happen, and just a phenomenal husband, father, man of God. And now he's a church member. Like he's not in ministry. He's a worship leader for several years. And so, but now he's just a guy in the church. He's like, we've lost the epic nature of what we're doing. We've lost that idea that we're part of a story that's bigger than ourselves. Yeah. And so as I was thinking about that, and I was looking, kind of at the stories and things that we're attracted to, right? It's important that we remember and we reframe that like we are supposed to be kind of the heroes of today. But what does that mean as spiritual men? And I was looking at maybe, Romans 5, a lot of cool stuff in there, not Romans 5, Romans 8. But as I started taking notes on Romans 8, I've got a 35-minute time slot, and I'm like 40 pages into my handwritten notes. I'm like, this is not going to work. And then there was a passage I preached not too long ago on the book of Ezra, where it said that Ezra was a guy who studied the word, obeyed the word, and taught the word. And I was like, well, that's pretty, simple, clear, and concise, but it really doesn't speak to the topic stuff. What I landed on was Galatians 5:22 and 23, which is a passage that a lot of us are familiar with. It's the fruit of the Spirit. So it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The law is not against such things. So if we're spiritual men, this is actually what we're called to be. It's not, we oftentimes conflate being spiritual with being able to preach or to teach or to play music, and we think of them as gifts that we see happen like on the platform. And that's not really the case, right? Like those gifts are, and we talked about this recently, like those gifts are the same as any other gift. Like if I have the gift of hospitality or encouragement and I use it, then that is better than a person who speaks well but not great because they haven't invested time into that skill and in order to do it. But what I started to look at is the antithesis of each of these things. And it really kind of woke me up to something. So I wanted us to kind of chat about that. Yeah. So when we look at these qualities, if we're going to be, men of the Spirit, we've got to have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. One thing real quick to hit on is that like the fruit of the Spirit is singular.
Yeah.
Like this is one fruit that's supposed to have all of these kind of flavors or, characteristics to it. It's not the fruits of the Spirit where we're like, oh, I'd like a little love and I'll take I'll take love and joy today,
That's
but
a good
I'm not
point.
choosing peace.
Yes.
Yeah. Right?
No, you exemplify all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of went through these, and this is how I presented. But I wanted to see your thoughts on this morning. So the first one is love, right? And the opposite of love. What do you think the opposite of love is?
It's not hate.
It's not hate. Hate and love are actually really closely related because that pendulum swings pretty far.
I've heard a couple versions of this. It could be, and that makes sense to me. Because I heard that one of them, maybe fear could be one.
Okay.
But also apathy.
Apathy.
Yeah.
Apathy is because even with fear, there is the thought.
Yeah.
Right. And with most of, there's like 60 something definitions of love in the English language. It's such a widely used word, right?
Yep.
Because I don't love my wife the same way I love French fries, but we use the same word.
Yeah.
So that said, the reason that apathy is the opposite of love is because love is to have something that you have affection for, that you're actively, trying to care for, something like that. And apathy is something that does not enter into your mind until it's brought to your attention.
Yep.
That you don't even think about it. And so if we're talking about being men of the Spirit or being spiritual men, like that is you're on one end of the spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is that like we love God, we love our families, all of those things, or we're apathetic towards those things. Yeah. And when we talk about like having the fruit of the Spirit, it means one, that we exemplify that in the world around us, but also that we are examples of that in our relationship with God. And I think that for a lot of men, that this is where it starts, is because we've become apathetic towards our relationship with the Lord. Mm-hmm. Right? There's a great Charles Spurgeon quote from one of his sermons from probably like the mid 1800s that he says that there are so many people that can write their names on the dust that's been collected on their Bibles. And I was like, man, it's freaking harsh, dude. But I think that that's still true. Why do you think apathy has become so prevalent because it's not just the men in the church, but we'll stick with men. Yeah. Because that's who this particular talk was kind of designed for. Why do you think apathy has become so prevalent with men in the church?
Like, do you mean toward God, the things of God, or toward people, or toward
all of the above?
everything?
But let's stick with like the things of God, right?
Yeah, I think that it's a lack of. It's two things. So it's a lack of reverence, and the reverence comes from a lack of knowledge, because I think the more that you know who God is, the more you love him, but the more you are like in awe of who he is. And then it's not like you're not pursuing the things of God because it's just some duty or responsibility. It's you are pursuing the things of God because you are zealous about his glory, because you want his name to be made great in all the earth, because you want other people to come to know him and to come to love him and cherish him. And so it's just I guess also probably just a lack of passion, but I think the passion, all of these things are inspired by a knowledge of God.
Right.
And so there's kind of I hear this said a lot, but a lot of people, we live in this like information age. There's so much stuff available to you. There are a billion. I mean, dude, I can't even. There of all the people that I love and trust, and the people send me like sermons, podcasts, audiobooks,
right?
And it's all good stuff. It's stuff I wish I could consume, but it's more. And then there's stuff that I feel I'm supposed to pursue just individually, like privately. I can't get through everything that even those people have sent me.
Yeah.
or even the stuff that I know I want to get to. I have a stack of books that I need to read. And I'm saying I'm overwhelmed with stuff that's coming into my brain. And that's all stuff that has to do with God and the things of God and his glory. But I think just people are just bombarded with so much stuff that it's easy to kind of get lost under the layers of all this information that they're taking in. And it's just made an environment where it's created an environment where it's easy to be apathetic because you're not passionate about anything. There's too many things coming in.
Yeah.
And it's hard to focus on anything. But again, the thing that we really need to be focusing, the remedy for that is of refocusing on learning about God, studying his word. And in doing so, you become more, I think it will ignite your passion for God. And that love for God will then, it's not a one-way street, and it's not exhaustible, because once you start like lavishing your love on him and he fills you up with his love, that stuff pours over into everyone else and everything else, which it's impossible to be apathetic when you're filled with the love of God. So
yeah, it's one of those too that like I'm wondering if, to kind of pull together a lot of the feedback that I've been getting, right? And David's in particular, is if we've kind of lost our place in the story. And that's one of the things that, like, as David and I were unpacking that, I really struggled with, because, as a pastor, one, I don't want to think that that's happened to me, right? And maybe it has. But also, I don't want to think that I haven't done a good job of communicating that.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of coming to terms with the fact that, like, we aren't talking about, the kingdom of God in that way, right? That there has been this kind of groundswell within the jiu-jitsu community of people that are following Jesus, and we're seeing people that are in jiu-jitsu that are having these encounters with other believers where ministry is able to happen, and we're seeing people that are in this particular martial art that are getting saved all the time, because there's all of these things that we're kind of missing from the churches in our community. And we're building that community outside of the church, but we're not building it inside of the church. That, the sparring and the interactions and stuff that we've got there, where there's a physical component to it, and that physical component is actually what breeds the ability for men to have the emotional component, and those conversations, right? It's the same with but I want to make sure that I'm talking about this properly, because I know we got people of all ages that listen to the show, but there is within your marriage, right, that the woman often wants to talk before there's an intimacy.
Yes.
Right? That like that for her, those conversations are what prepare her for intimacy. But oftentimes for men, it's the reverse.
Yeah, right.
Is that like once intimacy happens, then now we're
emotionally.
Like now our guard is down enough,
right,
and all of that. And so like when we do premarital counseling, that's one of the things that we talk about. It's like, hey, there are going to be some times where she really needs to talk to you before y'all can do this. But there are going to be other times where ladies, like, if you want to get him to talk, like this is what, this is the kind of the order of operations for that to happen. And I think jiu-jitsu for men, that's what we get this, the endorphins are going because we're fighting one another. And then because of that, because we're physically exhausted by the end of it, then we're able to kind of open up. Well, there's not a lot of that within the church.
No.
And men more and more are feeling maligned as part of it. And so because of that, we're finding that these guys who are talking about very masculine things, but that have churches that are pretty theologically bankrupt, are attracting a lot of men because it's keying in on these other things. They're like, hey, let's get together and do a bunch of push-ups and, yell at each other and all that. And the guys are like all fired up about it. But then whenever they preach the word, you're like, that actually has nothing to
Yeah.
do with Jesus at all.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe we've lost not just like we feel like we've lost our place in culture and in society because we've been told that we're unnecessary now. That we're losing our place within the church for that same reason. And I think that a lot of that is feeding the apathy. But going back to something that we talk about, obviously something that we believe in, is that like that is a mindset where we're not taking ownership or responsibility for what God has called us to do. We're allowing ourselves to be affected. Well, if they don't want me, then, if there's not a place for me, or I don't know, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that the Dr. Respis said that I thought was absolutely phenomenal, he's like, if you're a man and you don't think you need to serve in a kid's ministry, but you've got 5 kids, then you're wanting other people to serve and take care of your family, and you're unwilling to do it.
Yeah.
And that's your problem. That's something you got to get over. And the other thing that he said that I thought was really great was that your kids are not that good at whatever it is that you're doing on Sunday morning that's keeping you out of church, whether it's baseball or jiu-jitsu or whatever it is. Like, your kid's not that good. He's not going to make it. All of that money that you're throwing at this other thing, that is more often than not, that is for dad's ego and not for the kids.
Well, at what cost? Like even if your child was going to defy the odds and become a professional, football player, baseball player one day, like, what was the cost? The cost was getting them out of the fellowship with the body of Christ to pursue that. Yeah. And that's a loss.
100%.
Yeah, that is an absolute failure.
Yeah.
I think I talked about this on the podcast, but I was saying my dad was like, he was very careful. He was the opposite of that.
Yeah.
We did not miss church for anything sports related ever. But we definitely, even like midweek when I was in high school, my dad told my football coach, well, actually he told me I need to talk to my football coach.
Right.
And I did, and he told me, you need to prioritize like your involvement in church. I was a worship leader a youth worship leader when I was in high school, and it was like, that's a pretty important thing. And if you're going to be involved there, you can't just show up when the service starts. Like, you need to rehearse before that. We always did our practices before the service. And so for the first while, I was trying to figure out how to make that work because I had football practice and I wasn't pulling up until the service started and we didn't rehearse. And so my dad was like, if you're going to be involved there and serve in the church there, you need to give it the proper attention and focus. And so I had to talk to my coach and tell, Coach, I have to leave practice early. My brother and I both have to leave. We both play in the worship band. We need to leave early so we can have worship practice before church starts. And my coach didn't like it, but at the same time, like, he knew where our priorities were. There was no hiding that. It was just like, and I think to that end, it's like you communicate, you're solidifying for yourself what things are important when you do that. But then also you're setting the tone for the people around you, and it's a tone you need to continue to uphold. It's like, you said this is what's important to you, so keep acting and living like that is important to you, you know, in all aspects of your life. So anyway.
Yeah, I do. I talked to a buddy who he had his kid in select baseball since he was like 8. Yeah. And the kid's 14 and wants to play football in high school, and he's not going to play baseball. Mm-hmm. And he was like, we spent all this money. I was like, bro, you spent $30,000 over the last few years to keep this kid in baseball. Not to mention, like, that's just what they paid per season.
Jeez,
right?
Man.
That's just the accumulation of what they paid per season, not gas and food and hotel rooms and all this stuff for these traveling
opportunity
teams.
Costs. Like, how much work did you have to miss to be out of town?
Exactly, right? So, and he's upset about it. And I was like, your kid doesn't like baseball anymore, right? He got burned out. But you also look at, your family in particular. You got pro ball players who came out of your family, right? That were part of that 0.001% or whatever it is. Yeah. And there's a lot of, I think, parents that need to realize the difference between if your 5-year-old is in, select sports or Jiu-Jitsu or whatever it is. And, by the time they're 14, they're competing in tournaments. They're not going to have that much of an edge on the kid that started when they were 12 and that's competing at 14.
Yes.
Like the likelihood that they are going to beat that kid in a tournament is pretty negligible if they're not like in love with it.
Bro, that is
most
such
of the time,
a
like
good
people
point.
aren't.
Yeah,
right?
that is a great point and that's kind of where I'm getting with Zeke. Like, I'm starting to understand. It's like, and I can't remember who told me. Maybe Iago de Souza told me this. He's an amazing jiu-jitsu coach, competitor. He has a young boy too, and he was talking to me about this. He's like, look, right now doesn't really matter that much. I mean, you're helping him learn whatever stuff he's doing in jiu-jitsu is important for him outside of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
I can do this. I'm going to be okay. It's hard, but I can do it. That kind of stuff. Not so much learning. It's not that he's going to be learning technique right now that's going to be really sharp when he's older.
Right.
But a lot of that stuff he's going to learn or redo or whatever. It's so that when he gets older, that's when that's when that technique's going to matter and his time on the mat's really going to matter. Right now I'm just teaching him lessons outside. I'm using jiu-jitsu to teach him lessons about life.
Yeah.
And not just about jiu-jitsu. So in the same way, it's kind of like, hey, look, I mean, if your kid, like, just because your kid's a really good 6-year-old baseball player doesn't mean he's going to be a really good 14-year-old baseball player.
Yeah.
Like,
or that he's even going to be interested in it at 14.
Yeah, exactly to your friend's point, right? I mean, exactly what happened when he went to high school and wanted to, I don't want to play baseball anymore.
Yeah.
And not that it was all for nothing. I mean, I'm sure they made great memories and he learned stuff along the way, but at the same time, that was just to show, was it worth it missing out on every
if
weekend?
you had that even in a low yield savings account and you just like, but the thing is like, you're not going to save that much money.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
We're willing to throw that at everything. We're willing to use that as like, oh, we just don't have money to tithe. Oh, you don't have money to tithe. You can pay $6,000 a year to have your 7-year-old on a traveling baseball team.
Yep.
Cool. Like, I'm just glad I got enough stuff that I've got to explain to the Lord whenever I get there. Like, this isn't one. But I think that all of those things are byproducts of an apathetic relationship towards the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that kind of came out of this as we were, as we got together with other men and we're unpacking it, is that those are symptoms of what the real problem is. They're not the problem. It's because of my apathy towards God, towards His bride, that I feel like this is an okay thing to do. And that was kind of an eye opener.
That's great.
Kind of an eye opener for us. I know we got about 10 or 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
So the second one, joy, the opposite of joy is calamity, which I didn't realize. Yeah. So joy is not an emotion. Joy is a state of being, which is an important thing to understand, right? Like, I can do something that makes you unhappy, but if your joy comes from the Lord, then you are in a state of joy. You are not in a feeling of joy.
So It's not, because I would almost think that would be peace, but joy, you're saying, is like a state of, like something you're operating in.
Yeah, it's joy is a characteristic. Happiness is an emotion.
Yeah.
And so like that's something, like, you can be joyful even in times where things are sad or whatever. And I forget who put it this way. It might have been Tim Keller, who said that essentially the Christian is the only one that can balance the dichotomy between joy and sorrow, because we are the only ones that have ultimate joy after death. That we know what the plan is for when we pass on, that we have a hope in that. And so even in our times of greatest sorrow, we can rejoice and be joyful because of that, which is why the scripture tells us over and over again to rejoice in all things, which is to be joyful. And that, like, our joy can't be stolen from us because it comes from the Lord. But if we're on the opposite end of that spectrum, like if we're not being joyful, then what we're doing is we're breeding calamity and destruction, because we are not building the kingdom of God. We're literally tearing down the walls on the outside of the kingdom. Yep. And when you think of the guys that have that, sort of we always talked about it as like the brooding brother mentality. They like are always walking around with a chip on their shoulder and all of that.
I had one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I did. There was an unflattering season of my life where that was the case, right? We'd lost a record contract, and then I had torn 4 of the 6 outer ligaments in my ankle after I'd done really well at a football tryout, and then after that had a knee injury, same knee that I eventually ended up rupturing my ACL on. And so I was like, okay, cool, God, you just don't want me to do anything with my life. All of the things that I want to do with it, you obviously don't want me to do. So I'm just going to be upset about it, and was destructive to the kingdom instead of, looking at this and saying, okay, Lord, obviously you're closing these doors temporarily at least. So like, what do you want from me? Yeah. And instead I was like, I don't need you. Yeah. You've obviously shown me you don't want anything to do with me, which was the complete opposite of that. The opposite of peace is strife. And one of the things that was interesting about this is that strife is something that we cause in our lives and in the lives of others. Peace is something that we bring to our lives and the lives of others. And so, that was a really interesting thing as I'm like looking at this, because, all of these things require humility. Yeah. And we cause strife when we try to make everything about us, right? I had Danley. But there's a podcast that I did. The very first podcast I really poured myself into is one called The Reverend and the Reprobate. Mm-hmm. We've got some awesome episodes with comedians and apologists and stuff that we talked to over the years. But we had this joke where he and I would both try and manipulate situations. Mm-hmm. We would, because we're both very, shoot from the hip idea people whenever we're in collaboration. And so we would come up with these ideas, and I was like, why would I ever? But it would be something ridiculous. So, hey, if you and Kim, I'll cook steaks, but I need you and Kim to go get the steaks, and y'all come over to my house to cook them. I was like, why would I do that? And it's like, well, so that way everybody gets what I want, right? Which is I want steaks, but I don't want to buy them, and I don't want to leave my house, but I'm willing to cook. So if you and Kim if y'all would pack up your family, come over to my house, buy all of the food, I'm willing to cook it. But you know what? I actually like the way that you cook steaks better. So what I'll do is I'll provide the grill at my house, and you guys can come over and do it. And then that was the joke, is that everybody gets what I want. Yeah. And the idea that the world revolves around us is kind of like that thing that we begin to manipulate situations so that everybody gets what we want. And peace is about not just like finding compromise or the middle ground, but finding the solution that, one, glorifies God over and above everything else, but second, allows everybody to work out of their gifting so that none of us are being elevated above where really above where God is supposed to be. Yeah. And that's the ultimate place for peace. But when we don't do that, we cause strife because we create friction and stuff. Patience, the opposite of patience, I thought was really interesting, is defiance. So I would have thought impatience. Yeah, right. Right? Like, that's the easy antonym. No, it's defiance, because if I'm not waiting on God, then I am in disobedience to him.
That makes sense.
And I think that maybe the best example of this one is we just kind of quick hit on the rest of these. I think each of these could probably be an episode in themselves. Maybe that's something we should explore. But the opposite of patience is defiance. And you really see that in the life of Saul. Because Saul was told, hey, listen, I will deliver, the armies of your enemies into your hands. Yeah. Wait on Samuel to give the sacrifice. Yeah. And he waited a little bit, and he was like, nah. Yeah. Go ahead, bring it up here. We'll slaughter it. And then when Samuel gets there, he's like, bro, you just lost your kingdom.
Well, and what did he do when he went to go consult with that witch or something? Yeah. But wasn't he supposed to be, I'm trying to remember why he called on Samuel, or why he tried to have her conjure up Samuel. I'm trying to remember.
Oh
what he was
yeah,
doing.
after Samuel dies.
After Samuel dies,
Yeah.
what he was doing, but obviously
I think he was like running from
sinful.
David. Yeah.
Yeah.
And practicing divination and all of
Yeah,
those things,
yeah.
right? So yeah, our impatience is not. So impatience is not the opposite of patience, because impatience is the byproduct of defiance.
Yeah.
That like, I'm not going to wait on God. I'm going to do this.
That's true.
And
yeah.
you know, we see that also like with our kids.
Yeah.
Right? Because like the delayed obedience is disobedience.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
We're at this stage right now where with our 2-year-old, we're like, we'll tell you once.
Yep.
Right? And then the second time, like, now we're going to physically move you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
Hey, I need you to get to your high chair.
Yeah.
That's not happening. Like, I know you heard me.
Yeah.
Right? I saw your ear kind of perk up, and then you turned to ignore me.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. Dad told you to go to your high chair. So we pick him up, we
Yep.
put him in the chair, and he's
Yep.
like, no, I want to do it on my own. But you lost that chance.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And so he's starting to get it.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's that defiance, and we can recognize it in kids. We recognize it in biblical characters, but we don't in ourselves.
I think that's a great. Yeah, and now I'm starting to see it, especially as it relates to kids, because you think,
Yep.
like I tell, like Sayla, she'll be by the back door. She wants to go play outside. Like, no, you need to wait till your sister gets her shoes on. You guys can go out together. And she's like, and she's just roll her eyes, and then Safina's taking too long. We're taking long to get her shoes on. Sayla's out the door.
Yeah.
It's like, well, now you got to come inside and sit in the corner for 5 minutes. You get 5 minutes less of outside time because you were being impatient. But it's like, it's that defiance. I don't want to wait. I'm going to do what I want, what I know, what I think is right. That's good.
Yeah. The opposite of kindness, which are acts of service, is impediment. So instead of doing something simple in order to make somebody's life easier, you do nothing, or you actually do something to impede them, right? Instead of holding the door open for somebody, I'm gonna make sure that the door's shut, kind of put my foot behind it, sort of a thing. The opposite of goodness is immorality. That one I think we could dive into a lot. The opposite of gentleness is harshness, which that one seems pretty straightforward. The interesting thing to me about this one is that you are not capable of being gentle unless you are able to be harsh. Mm-hmm. Because your gentleness means nothing if you're incapable of harm.
There it is. There's Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Kind of. He's not the... that idea does
like
not belong to him.
But that's
truth.
I thought that was really, really interesting, because in the definition of gentleness, it is someone who is capable of doing harm that chooses to be tender.
Yeah, that's true.
And I thought that was a really interesting thing, especially for us to think about.
A lot. In fact, Formiga, he's encouraged me before by his words about me, specifically about gentleness, because I'm not small, and when I roll with people, it was like one of the greatest compliments I've ever received when he was talking to me about, he said in front of the group, because there was a guy that was a big guy that was my size or a little heavier than me, that was hurting people in the gym. Because he wasn't being in control of his strength. He was using full strength on everybody. Oof. And even, so on people that are his size, fine. Right. But on people that are half your size.
Yeah. If you're 320 pounds and you're rolling with somebody that's 150, like, take it easy.
Bro, you cannot.
You can hurt them.
Yeah. Even if you're not trying to hurt them, you not being careful can injure somebody. So Formiga was saying, hey, listen, you being big is not an excuse for you,
to harm others.
Yeah, he's like, and his example was, he's like, look at Isaac. He's like, I can put Isaac against a 90-pound, 12-year-old kid, or or someone his size, and they're at the end of the roll, everyone's gonna be safe. They're gonna be fine. And he's like, that is what we need. We need more of that kind of gentleness. But again, like you said, you can't. It's not gentle to just like gentleness. It's not being harmless. It's not like, well, you're not even capable of hurting anyone. So no one is calling someone like a small person that can't, that's not heavy or, strong, gentle.
Let's go back to our kids, right?
Yeah.
2-year-olds are the most violent people on the planet.
Yeah, 100%.
Like they just are, right? Because they don't have all of the social cues. They don't really have control of themselves. Yeah, there's a lot of things they don't understand. We both have 2-year-olds in the house. My 2-year-old might haul off and hit me in the face, or they're at that height where they haul off and hit you in the squares and like just put you on your knees, right? But like if I know that it's coming, I'm not bothered by it.
Yeah.
Right? If it catches me by surprise, it'll irk me. But at the end of the day, right, unless he's got, a wooden spoon or something in his hand, like I'm not hurt.
Yeah.
And even like the hardest he can go right now, if you were to hit me like that, it'd be like, bro, that was weak.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. But like him going 10% or him going 100%, there's no difference.
Yeah.
In the way that it's received by me. But when you're rolling with that 90-pound kid, right, you realizing, hey, you know what? I should only give 10% pressure.
Yes.
Right? That's tremendous to them.
Yep.
Right? And knowing that, if I lay all, 310 pounds of myself on there and really try to get position and pressure, like I could hurt them.
Yeah.
But, at 10%, they're stuck.
Yep.
And they're like, I don't know what to do. And you're like, well, you can still breathe. We can talk through this. Move your hip here, or do this, or, just, hey, I'm just going to hold you here because you need to know what it's like to be in a pressure position.
Yeah.
Don't panic, all that stuff. And that's one of the things that one of my very first professors did in the women's self-defense class is he had women with other women. And he was like, all right, here's what I want you to do. You're going to get in mount. This is what mount looks like. And you're just going to lean over the face of your opponent or of your partner. And we're just going to sit there for like 30 seconds. And if you're on the bottom, turn your head, breathe, just don't panic.
Yeah.
Because if you end up in a situation where somebody's trying to harm you, this is likely a position that you're going to find yourself in. Mm-hmm. And if you've never been in it, it's incredibly uncomfortable. It triggers your fight or flight. Like you're going to want to panic. Yeah. And so we're just going to hang out in it. And that's what they spent the first 2 minutes doing.
That's actually really good.
And then flipped over and did the exact same thing. But that's the deal. Like if we're incapable of harm, or if we've never been put in those situations, then we can't actually say that we're gentle. Yeah. Faithfulness is treachery. Mm. And I thought that was another one that was interesting when you talk about like what it means to actually be a traitor to the gospel. And you look at a lot of the false teaching that's there, or that's really become prevalent today, is that it is treacherous to God, that we are actually traitors to the very thing that we're supposed to promote. And then the last one is self-control, is indulgence. Yeah. And whether that indulgence is like within a substance, or whether it is like from most men, is it's our emotions.
Oh my gosh. Anger.
And I was going to say, we want to say that we're not emotional because we don't go cry in the corner. We're like, oh, my wife's so emotional. My daughter's so emotional. She's crying all the time. And we see that, we see those tears and we see that vulnerability, and we're like, that's weak. That's emotion. Not realizing that our anger, which actually makes us feel really powerful, is not only equally emotional, but twice as damaging. Yeah. Than the other
it's
thing.
Weak.
So,
it's weak.
It is in its essence. It's weak because it shows that we have a lack of self-control and that we have a lack of humility, because we're not subjugating ourselves to God, who says things like, in your anger, don't provoke your children. Mm-hmm. In your anger, don't sin. Yeah. And our anger leads us to do both of those things. And we're like, God, and no, that's the thing. I always thought that I was really good at this one until I had kids. Yeah. And my wife is like, hey, telling our 2-year-old to suck it up. Yeah. Ineffective.
Oh man.
1, he doesn't know what that means. Yeah. And 2, like sometimes he just needs to cry. And the first time he looked, like I did something that I knew was going to bother him, but it was a disciplinary thing. Like, hey man, if you're and it was a simple, like, don't drum at the table. Yeah. With your fork. Yeah. Don't use your fork and your spoon to drum on your stainless steel plate that your mom insists that you have at the table. This isn't where we drum. The table's for eating, or I'm going to take your stuff away. So I took him away, and he looks at me, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. He was like, "Hi." I was like, "What's he saying?" And then he looks at me. He's like, "Cry." And I was like, "Are you asking permission to cry?" And he's like, "Mm-hmm." I was like, "Ah." Yeah, go ahead. And so he like took a second and cried, and he was like, okay, I'm okay. And then I'm talking to my wife, and I'm like, did I do that? Does he feel like he has to have permission to cry because I've like told him time and time again not to do it, and developmentally that's the only way he knows how to express himself? And she's like, no, you didn't. Like, we've talked about it, that it's okay. But if you will tell me what's going on, then you can go and you can cry, and we'll give you your space. And I was like, good, because I felt so much parent guilt, in that moment. But she was like, but we had those conversations because of the conversations you and I have had to have. And I was like, oh, cool. So I suck at this. And that's one of the things about my wife that I love is she walked me through. So she's like, no, you don't. We've got stuff we've got to learn, and we've got to learn tools for us as parents, and we've got to learn to give them tools. So
I like that I like this approach to helping to better understand the fruit of the Spirit, looking at what they are not. That kind of helps shape it. It puts these parameters around it to help you.
Here's the spectrum, right? If I find that I'm too indulgent, then that means that I actually need self-control. If I find that I'm harsh, that means I need to press in and be asking for gentleness. If I find that, I'm becoming a person who is disengaged or, is talking bad against the church, that like, oh, here's what I need. I need more love. I need more faithfulness instead of, treachery. It's
calamity.
It's pretty wild.
It is. That's a great, for me, that's I think a really good way to help me understand things better. Sometimes is starting there. Okay, like, hey, what is this? Well, okay, let me tell you what it's not. And it's like, oh, okay, that helps shape and define that. That's great. That's good, man. I bet that was extremely helpful and useful for the men that were there, especially because that's just one component of that RISE acronym that you were. And
it was awesome.
Yeah, and God, I think I'm feeling very called recently to really pour into, because there's some people there's some men that I disciple just individually. And I think holistic is kind of the way to go. Like, not meaning, nothing artsy, but just holistic, meaning it's multifaceted. Discipleship is multifaceted. And so in the same way, I mean, what they were doing was a real ministry to men, and it's not all just the raw stuff like, okay, do more push-ups. And it's like, okay, that's a piece of it, That's one small piece of this, of biblical masculinity that some people are doing really well, but that's not the extent of it.
No, and if we're going to be part of that epic, one of the things that I've always heard growing up was that the Christian army is the only one that shoots its own wounded.
Oh, dude.
But
Will Tate said the same thing.
What I'm discovering the longer I'm in ministry is that we're also the only army where the men are satisfied sitting on the couch and sending the women and the children to the front lines. Man. And we've got to change that. And I think the only way that happens is when we embrace biblical principles and the fact that, like, we are not just the ambassadors of the kingdom of heaven, but we're meant to be the heroes and the soldiers on the front lines in the kingdom. And when we embrace that as our identity, then we're going to be much, much more effective in doing the thing that God wants us to do.
I love that. And I know we'll end here in a second. I think that hits on this idea that I've been feeling very strongly about, which is that so many of the men that I know, and I mean, just this whole community. I mean, we're really plugged in with a lot of guys. They're jiu-jitsu guys, they're fitness guys, they're special forces, military guys. And all of these guys are the type that are extremely capable, extremely disciplined, extremely willing to put themselves in harm's way to protect other people. And that's a really admirable quality. But like, there's kind of a blind spot with a lot of people that I know that even are as capable as that and willing to do the dangerous thing, to jump into harm's way. But it's like, you need to turn that same tenacity onto the things that you don't necessarily see. Like, if you just perceive there's a bad guy that's trying to hurt these people, or there's this emergency and I'm going to put myself right in the middle of it to help save these people. It's like, yeah, but what about controlling your anger? What about, like, are you approaching it with the same aggression? What about the lust of your eyes and the lust of the flesh? Like, are you dealing as aggressively with this as you are with a potential bad guy, or or like laziness? Okay, you worked out really hard. Are you going to read as with the same tenacity? Are you going to study the Word of God with the same type of aggression? And that's what I'm saying. Like, there are so many guys that I know that are willing to do hard things physically, but not willing to do hard things spiritually. And we need more of it. And so I love that you were able to minister to these men this past weekend.
It was fun.
and now get to share that with this group. I know we didn't get to unpack all of the fruit of the Spirit.
But yeah, well, maybe maybe you and I, whenever we're doing these together, we just hop onto whatever the
I
next
love
one
it, man.
is.
The fruit of the Spirit is something that
It's not a coconut.
No, not an apple. It's not as I have in my kitchen, not a collection of actual fruit.
Yes.
And they're not for individual, like you said, they're not for partaking in individually. They're all together. But I love it, man. I want to talk more about that in the future, but
It'd be busting. It'd be super dope. No cap.
There we go. Thank you for the probably the 2 Gen Zers that listen to our podcast.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yep. You've been listening to the Riz Master and the Rizzler here on Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu 088.
No. On that note, let me go to our Heavenly Father now for
please.
forgiveness.
Every good thing we said today just threw in the come out
so
there in
good,
the last 30 seconds.
All right. Heavenly Father, thank you so much. Thank you for this morning, Lord. I thank you for your kindness to us. And Lord, I thank you for your conviction, the conviction of the Holy Spirit, that doesn't feel like guilt. It feels like correction and guidance and hope, Lord. And I just pray that whoever listened to this podcast this morning, Lord, that you would, in the way that only you can convict their hearts to turn to you and to refine the things in their life, God, that would to remove the things in their life that are impeding their connection to you, or ruining their witness with other people, or stifling your voice. Lord, I pray that you would do that work in all of us, that you would encourage us and you would show us where we're at fault, Lord, and you give us the strength and the courage to pour into those areas and fix them. I thank you for your word. I thank you for the teaching of your word. Thank you for Lucas's contribution today about the fruit of the Spirit. Lord, I thank you that you are the author and the perfecter of our faith. And I pray that you would, Lord, help us to bear and exemplify this fruit of the Spirit, that you would fill us up, that you would continue to sanctify us and do your work in our heart, that when people look at us, especially men, Lord, that they would see, especially men that lead families and lead churches and lead organizations, God, that we would be a great representation of you by bearing the fruit of the Spirit. And I pray for all of our listeners, God, who are all believers, men and women, Lord, that they would all grow in their faith and they would grow in showing the fruit of the Spirit to everyone in their lives. We love you, and we're so thankful for the teaching of your word and for the fact that we can get together, whether it's through a podcast or through weekly or monthly discipleship or our live events or all these things. Thank you for creating this opportunity for us to do ministry and to do and to fellowship together. We love you, and we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, before we get out of here, I just want to say to all the servicemen and women, yesterday was Veterans Day. Thank you so much for your service to our country. We are in a massive debt to y'all for standing in the gap. I know some of you would look at me as JP does and say, well, it's my favorite job that I've ever had. I volunteered for it. So thanks for volunteering, and thanks for keeping us safe on the home front. And for everybody else, this has been Jesus in Jiu-Jitsu episode 088.
Go train.